Hello students, so this is the third lecture of electrostatics lesson 1, and in earlier video we have discussed about methods of charging, in which we have studied 3 points or 3 topics of method of charging, that was friction, induction and conduction. So in this topic we are going to study about Coulomb's law. So Coulomb's law basically deals with the force between the two charges. So let's get started with Coulomb's law, right? So this is what our Coulomb's law. What does Coulomb's law? It tells you about the force of attraction or repulsion or repulsion between the charges. Number 1 point. Number 2 is it is only valid for point charges. Point charges, that means you cannot apply this law for extended bodies like rod, ring, disc and all, right? So Coulomb's law is only valid for point charges. This is a kind of a central force. What a central force means if I take two charges, say they are positive in nature, so the attraction and repulsion will be in this line only. Line of action will be this only. The charge will not go here or any other. Yeah, if it repels, it won't go away like any of these line. Rather, it will go in this line of action only. Coulomb's law also follows inverse square law. Inverse square law. So what does that means? What does inverse means? Inversely proportional to, and square means the distance between the charges. It depends on the force depends on the square of the distance between the charges. So actually, what does Coulomb's law say? If I assume two charges, say Q1 and Q2, which are kept at say separation r, right? So they will attract or repel depending on the nature of charge. So they will either attract or repel depending on nature of charge, right? So according to Coulomb, the force of attraction or repulsion between them is directly proportional to the product of charges, and it is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. That is your inverse square law, right? If I combine both these, equation number 1 and equation number 2, if I combine them, it comes out to be force is directly proportional to the product of charges and r square. We can write like this. If I remove the proportionality sign, so it is, the constant appears like 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 divided by r square. This is my final result. This 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught can be written as say small k, and its value is 9 into 10 to the power 9, which is a very high value. That's why we can see two charges being attracted towards each other or repelled, right? So the value of k is very high, and this epsilon naught is nothing but absolute permittivity. And if I calculate the value, say, of epsilon naught, it is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught is 9 into 10 to the power 9, cross multiplying this. So epsilon naught comes out to be around 8.85 into 10 to the power minus 12. The value of epsilon naught is this, right? So we can say it is a constant value, but the constant k, the constant, if I to tell you about the constant k, this constant k, it depends on the surrounding medium. What does that mean? If I keep the charge q1 q2 in air, and if I keep these two charges again q1 and q2 in say other medium, say water, the force F1 and F2 will be different. That means the force will not be same, unlike we have studied in the gravitation chapter, where we have studied that the capital G is not depend does not depend on the surrounding, whereas here the constant K 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught it depends on the surrounding medium. So this formula that I have written here is for vacuum or air. But if the medium gets changed, if the medium gets changed, so the formula becomes 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into epsilon r q1 q2 by r square. Now I've introduced another constant which is epsilon r, and this epsilon r is named as relative permittivity. Relative permittivity. It is basically a ratio, or it is just a constant value. It does not have any unit. It's just a constant value. So I'll tell you some of the values of epsilon r, and which will give you an idea what does epsilon r does, and how can you calculate the force in other medium. So epsilon r for air or vacuum is approximately equals to 1, right? We take 1 for vacuum, and if we say epsilon r for vacuum, we take it as 1. Epsilon r for air is approximately 1.4 times 0.29, which is approximately 1. That's why I've taken air and vacuum to be 1. Epsilon r for say mica is 27. Epsilon r for water is 81, and epsilon r for metal will be say infinite. So these are some values, so you can compare. The minimum epsilon r is for vacuum and air, and the maximum is for metal. And you can see the epsilon r, the value of epsilon r is greater than 1 always. It is equals to 1 or greater than 1, and epsilon r is coming in the denominator. That means as the medium changes from air or vacuum to any other, the force decreases. Force decreases, right? So this value tells, the value of epsilon r basically tells you the amount of force decreased as compared to air or vacuum. So let us take an example. Let us take an example. Say I have considered two charges, Q1 and Q2, say kept at a separation r in air, and then the same charges Q1 and Q2 kept at the same separation r, and now the medium is water. If the force in the first case is F1 and the force in the second case is F2, then the relation between F1 and F2 will be, right? So let us write the equation for F1. So F1 will be equals to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. Epsilon r will be 1 for air, as we have discussed. Q1 Q2 by r square. Now F2, if I am writing, it is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. Now epsilon r for water is what? 81. Q1 Q2 divided by r square, right? What we can do is we can divide these two, and you can see 4 by epsilon naught, the whole things get cancelled out, and 81 will go up. So F1 by F2 is equals to 81. That means F1 is 81 times F2. Means the force in air is 81 times that of water, right? So this what is epsilon r. We can conclude one more thing, that the force between charges is maximum when they are kept in vacuum or air. Otherwise, the force will decrease. Okay, let us take another example. Say I have two charges, say Q1 and Q2, kept at a separation R, and there is a thin film of, say, epsilon R equals to 4, right? The value of epsilon R I have taken as 4. So, what will be the force between these two charges? Right? So, if the film is very small, if the film here is very thin, it is a very thin film, and it definitely will not going to affect the force. That means epsilon R will not come in this expression of force. The force will be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by R square. The most important thing is the charges must come inside the medium, then only the force changes. Here you can see the charges are in air only, so that doesn't mean it will change the force between them. For force to change, the charges Q1 and Q2 must be in the medium. If in this, as you can see in this expression, in this situation, there was a water and the charge was inside water, that's why I have written 1 by 4 pi epsilon into epsilon R. If the charges are in air, then you have to write 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught, considering to be it in air, right? So the force will not get affected. Okay. Now take one more example. Say we have a charge Q, right? And it is what? Broken into two parts. It is broken into two parts such that if I keep them at a separation R, I have to make the force between them is maximum when Q1 by Q2 is, now to find the ratio of Q1 and Q2 so that the force of attraction between Q1 and Q2 becomes maximum. So what we can do is we have to break capital Q into two parts, Q1 and Q2. So I'll tell you two methods. One is classical method, which involves differentiation. So whenever you have to find the maximum or minimum value of any expression, what you do is you differentiate it and equate it to 0. Now, if I say let the value of Q1 be X and Q2 will be what? Q minus X. Now these are two small charges, say kept at a separation R. So the force can be written as K Q1 Q2 divided by R square. We can simplify it. K by R square will come as a constant. It will be separated and we'll multiply X into Q and X square. It will become Qx minus X square. Now the second step is we have to differentiate it. We have to differentiate it and equate it to 0. Equate it to 0. So in order to find the maximum value, so if I differentiate df by dx, so I can say K by R square being constant will come out. We have to differentiate only Qx minus X square, right? So equating it to 0 is equals to K by R square, right? Q being constant will come out. The differentiation of X is 1 and differentiation of X square is 2X. And K by R square will go to 0. So we are left with 0 is equals to Q minus 2X, and X comes out to be Q by 2. That means the value of Q1 is Q by 2 and the value of Q2 is again Q by 2. So the ratio will be 1, right? So in order to make the product maximum, you have to break the charge into two equal parts. Always. You can learn this result also, right? Now the second is, it is based on the analytical part. It does not involves any differentiation. Say I assume a charge, say 10 coulomb, right? I have to break this charge into two parts such that the force becomes maximum. So in order to make the force becomes maximum, what we have to do is we have to uh, make the product maximum. So if I break 10 into parts, integral parts to be more precise, I can break into 9 1, 8 2, then 7 3, then 6 4, then 5 5, and goes on. Means the value will get interchanged, then you can write 4 6. So this is same as that of 6 and 4, right? Now in order to make the force maximum, what I have to do is I have to make the product maximum. So I can see 9 into 1 is 9, 8 into 2 is 16, 7 into 3 is 21, 6 4s are 24, and 5 5s are 25. So you can see, if you have if you broke the charge into equal part, then only you are getting the maximum product, right? So this can be the second method, which can be done analytically, right? And this is the classical method of solving difference by solving differentiation. This is classical method. So, right? So this can be done. So you have to remember the thing that I am that the main assumption of Coulomb, it's not the assumption, basically the main property of the property says that Coulomb's law is valid when the charge is point in nature, right? Only valid for the point charges, right? Now if I say what is actually a point charge, let me tell you what is a point charge. Point charge can be a bigger body if the dimension of two charges, say I have made two charges q1 and q2, and the dimension of charges is very 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 less than the distance between them. If this condition satisfied, if this condition gets satisfied, then you can say the charges are point in nature, right? Okay, again let us take another example. I have taken two charges, say q1 and q2, which is kept at a separation r, and the force can be written as k q1 q2 divided by r square, right? Now if I replaced a point charges with two bodies, say two spherical bodies, now q1 and q2 are nothing but spherical bodies, right? Identical spherical bodies, right? So you have to tell me the force F dash in this case, in case 2, yeah, case 2, this is case 1. So you have to tell me F dash is, options are, equals to the initial force F, number 2 greater than F, number 3 less than F, fourth cannot be predicted. Right? So these are spheres, bigger spheres as compared to point size. So it is sure that we cannot apply Coulomb's law in second case because the bodies are, say, not point in nature. So we cannot apply Coulomb's law. Rather, what we can do is we can just get an idea if the force is greater or smaller than the previous case, right? So what we can do is, say this q1 and q2, this is positively charged, and this is also, say, positively charged, right? So if they are if they become close to each other, what will happen is, say this is the r distance, is the distance of what we say center to center distance. Now when these two charges are coming close to each other, they will try to repel, and as a result the charge will get shifted on the far surface, on the other surface like this, which results in the increase in the center of charge. You have heard about center of mass. Here we are discussing about center of charge. So due to repulsion between the positive charges, these charges will go for on the farther surface, and the center to center distance, not here's the center to center distance, rather it is the center of charge. It is center of charge to the center of charge. Distance will increase. So in this case, the distance will increase. Right? So the distance will increase. So we know that F is inversely proportional to R square. So if the distance will increase, force will decrease. So I can say the force will decrease. But if the charge are dissimilar in nature, dissimilar means, say this is Q1, this is Q2, this is positively charged, this is negatively charged. Now this positive and negative charge will attract each other, and the result will be the Q1 and the Q2 charge will come on the nearer surface like this. So the center of charge will shift towards here, and you can see R decreases. So if R decreases, according to the relation, force will increase. So you cannot blindly say that force will always decrease. It may increase depending on the nature of charge, right? And we can get the idea of it, either it is greater, equal, or less than. We cannot get the exact value. Reason is Coulomb's law cannot be applied for bigger bodies. Only for point objects we can apply Coulomb's law, right? So these are some examples we have discussed in Coulomb's law, right?